Okay, ready for the demo?
Any questions so far?
Yeah, any questions so far? That's a great question. Before I jump in. Nothing? Okay. All right, so this is a private project that I've created, and if you want to play with it, I'm happy to open it up to any of you. And I have imported a handful of letters from the portal to Texas history. So right now, this is just the normal default flow of, here's a page to transcribe, and I can click through the rest of the pages, and I have unstructured text to transcribe into. So what we're going to do is configure this project, and we are going to enable metadata description. And that will make this a metadata description project and take us into a new tab for metadata fields. Right, and this is going to look very similar to the field-based transcription configuration screen you're used to and the spreadsheet transcription screen you're used to. Except one of the differences is that the first thing you're prompted to do is say, well, should people be able to transcribe and describe, or should this be a metadata creation only project?
Up to you.
It's up to you. And you can change projects from one kind to another. You can disable metadata description, you can enable it. No data is going to be lost if you do that.
In fact, we think we're not sure what the right approach is. We suspect that doing transcription and description or metadata creation kind of hand in hand makes the most sense. So hopefully someone would transcribe a letter, and then they would be in the context of that letter, and they would be able to answer the questions that you ask about it. When was it written? Where was it written to? But there's other possibilities of how you choose to make this workflow happen.
Right. For a pure crowd project that's working with correspondence, like this example, transcribe then describe makes perfect sense. But that's not the only kind of project that people will be running, and that's not the only kind of source, right? Correspondence is great, but it's not
dance posters or cards.
Yes. Okay.
With our slave schedules, we actually have done just the opposite, sort of. We've gone in and indexed pages that only had header information ourselves at the very beginning of a project. So I could see you going through with a large project like that and adding, this is a blank page, this doesn't actually have the data we want on the front end, and then I don't know how you would do it, but separating those pages. So so that you're only doing really truly on that second pass, the transcriptions.
That's an interesting point, because so for many of, especially the COSA records, you've got let's call it a book that's got a bunch of header information, which might be best captured as metadata, or introductory stuff, and then transcription of just the pages after that. I think I would probably use that mark blank feature for the ones that you wanted to skip. So what I would do is kind of upload the book, create a metadata description field like Ben's kind of working on demonstrating right now for capturing that front matter. And then I would probably go through the transcription of those front matter pages, and I just check that blank, and then leave the other ones, if that makes sense. We can talk about that more too when we get to specific projects, but I think that's a good point that we need to think through. So Ben is in the middle of creating a set of metadata fields. These have exactly the same field types as you're used to seeing with field-based transcription, except that we added a new one, which you're going to demonstrate, right? Yes. The new field type is a multi-select type. So we realize that many libraries and archives use things like Library of Congress subject headings to categorize things. And that things may fall into multiple categories. So that's what multi-select's for. I'm just going to show you how that works. So you select multi-select, you have to save it, and then you have this option to configure your options.
Okay, so these are from 1918, so I'm going to assume that they're talking about war.
And we did this as a pop-up with a pretty big field here, so you could copy and paste in a list that you had developed for a
Right,
project.
this can take a lot of options. Okay, another distinction here is that we also have a date field. This is similar to the field, the date fields that we have in spreadsheet transcription, but previously field-based transcription does not have a date field. So we can see the preview here. Document date is this ISO style yyyy-mm-dd.
You don't have to use it. You can use a string, a text instead if you don't like the kind of masked out ISO format.
Okay, so that's just the preview, but we are, I believe, done with this. So let's see how this works. Okay, so this is, as we said earlier, a combo transcription description project. And so I'm going to transcribe just a tiny little bit.
Belmont, New Mexico, maybe. Belmont NM, October 26th, 1918. My dear pretty, I can't help but wonder about you.
Worry, I think.
Oh. I have,
And we're going to stop right there, I think. And we'll save this, but it's not actually done yet. And then I'm, just for the sake of demonstration, going to see if we can get to the very end to see if there's anything about the person who's writing. And sadly, no, but I can see that.
up close to Cloudcroft.
Right, so that's just the transcription stage. And you've all seen that before. But we now have this extra step so that if you're in a dual transcription and description workflow, after you're done transcribing, hitting the next button prompts you to enter the metadata.
And notice that we're kind of popped out and we're now at the item level with overview, describe, and help, which is not where we were a minute ago, which was the page level. So it's a little bit, the UI is a little bit different here.
1918.
October 26th.
10,
26.
26.
Belmont. We do know where it came from.
And
recipient is pretty.
oh, right. Okay, not the sender. And we have no idea about these other things, but we know subjects. We're talking about domestic life. And
we page through it and see what else is in there.
all right. Okay, right. This is a great point. So the other thing that's interesting about this description screen is that you can see, without losing where you are in the data entry, you can page through all of the pages.
Well, it's actually about the flu, the 1918 flu.
Oh,
Did you see
right.
that? The
Okay,
flu is about as bad as it has ever been at Alamo. Yeah.
Wow. Right. So when you're describing items, you can see any of the pages in a work.
So that it's the same viewer we use for transcription. Sonia just had a comment that it's really convenient. It's the same viewer we use for transcription, just configured differently so that you can page through things. So that's pretty nice.
So you've got the thumbnails over here, but you also have the ability to page back and forth in the viewer. So I'm going to save this change. Okay, so that is the transcription and description flow. Oh, you know, there's one thing I forgot to show, which is that if I want to, as I'm typing, I can switch from viewing the original images to viewing the original text. And that will show me any text that's in here, whether it's transcribed or whether it's OCR that's been imported. I also have the ability to view the original metadata if any has been imported. right? So this is material that was added by the portal to Texas history where I imported this from. But if for some reason there are fields here that are not mentioned, like these subjects, for example, or places, right, where this is sent from, right? We don't have a place that is where this was created. So we could be pulling Belmont, New Mexico out here and adding that to this metadata.
It looks like they knew who sent it and received it.
So yeah, it looks like they
it
looks like they had the envelopes but didn't scan them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's modify this to create a pure description project. So I go into my metadata fields and say users only create metadata and save that. So now let's go to a different page. And this, you can see we skipped any kind of transcription step. This dropped us directly into metadata description. So let's see what this is. The document date, 1918. 10, 13. Oh. 10, 13. There we go. All right. And so we can look through this and see, all right, what else do we know about this?
Let's go to the last page, which would be where I would look for more. Is that the last page? No, here we go. It's from Marguerite, who has the post office now. I don't know what that means, but
love to you, Marguerite, who has the post office now. Okay, well, so the sender is Marguerite. And the recipient is Pretty.
During World War I, sometimes letters would be circular, so she may have been forwarding mail from overseas and that kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. One of these letters, as I imported it and was looking, is from the USS Huron at New York. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, so we're going to say that this is about shipping.
It's not, but
it's not. Okay, so that's a description only example. And again, we can, if there were text, we could pull that in, but we can also pull in the metadata and see what they're talking about. So let's talk about getting data out. So you can go to your export screen, and for, you're used to seeing a lot more in your export screens, but for projects that are set to only be metadata description, we kind of hide all of the export formats that are
I'm not actually sure is the right thing to do, because if you're going to do a multi-stage project, you might do metadata at the end, but you might want to export everything at the end.
Right.
So we should think through that some more, because it made sense when we did this, but I'm not sure it makes sense now.
Okay, let me open up that exported document. And I need to stop my share and then share my spreadsheet program. Okay, so this is the work metadata export, which already exists, but we use this to add all these metadata description elements to it. So we start off with standard information about what collection it is, what if there was any document sets, what the uploaded file name was, slugs and URLs, so you can get back to these things. And then there's statistics about if there was any transcription. Okay, then we have a set of columns that are the imported metadata. So any metadata that you imported either via CMS or if you uploaded a metadata spreadsheet, that's going to appear here so that you can correlate the old metadata to the newly created metadata. So these are all things that came in from the portal to Texas history. Then we get the actual metadata description. So there's a column for description status and who it was described by. So we can see we have 2 items that have been described. And then these are followed by columns for the actual metadata that was provided. So you can see Marguerite, Belmont, New Mexico, pretty, the subjects.
If you have more than one subject, how are they separated?
They should be separated by semicolons, but it looks like we may, did we actually create more than one subject for these?
I don't think so. We should try that. and see.
Okay, we should.
Yeah.
When we originally developed this, we separated subjects by semicolons. Sorry, that demo right here. Questions about this export? No? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna.
Does the data show up other places and other exports?
This is the only place the data shows up right now. We have thought about adding it to our JSON APIs, to our IIIF manifests. We're not quite sure yet how to differentiate between metadata that's created here versus metadata that's more authoritative that was provided by the institution during the import process. So we're not sure yet.
We don't want to be making decisions about what's your authoritative metadata that you're going to show to users. So this is not, it's not in, you know, the PDF exports or the Word exports or the text or TI exports. So that's something I think, you know, if we'd like feedback on, if you.
Yeah, we're very interested in doing this, but we want to do it right. So if there's specific use cases and we should say, you know, hey, we really want to use it this way, let's add it, right? We don't want a situation in which somebody could create metadata and then do a PDF export and say, look, this says Bozo the Clown wrote this letter or something.